Saul and Battery, hosted by
Jeans
and Kelly. Forget what you know. Forget what you know. A Saul and Battery.
This week, we get a rare Chuck and Jimmy moment. Mike goes on a Werner hunt. There is a massive Greek and sincerity scam going on, which features the film crew. Jimmy gives a pep talk, ? Mike catches Werner. Gus, what happens? And Jimmy fools everyone, including Kim, at his reinstatement hearing. And we are introduced to Saul Goodman. Hi, everybody. This is Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram.
And I'm Jeans, YEUNGJEANS on Instagram and Twitter.
And you just got a recap of the season 4 finale.
Yep.
Wow, I had forgotten how much feels were packed into this particular episode. There's a lot of stuff going on. It was a good, strong finish to the season 4.
Absolutely.
And it only took them 4 seasons to have Better Call Saul have a character named Saul. So,
true story.
That's
all right.
A bit of a surprise.
We can dig right into the beginning, which is Chuck vouching for Jimmy at the bar. It's very quick. It's not real long. And then they decide to celebrate with some karaoke.
At a different bar. Two different bars.
A different kind of bar, yes.
Yeah. Wow, Ernie. Who I'm a big fan of Ernie. Not a big fan of Ernie's karaoke. He's tough.
It was hard to swallow. I love him too. I do, but that was
that was almost
even all I had. I have to. Yeah, the other guy that worked in the mailroom with Jimmy, Ernie, he gave it all he had. He belted it out, but it was tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to believe in yourself, but maybe sometimes you shouldn't, because it was tough. And I kind of recall from the various podcasts and things were out from the cast and such, is that when Bob Odenkirk began to sing, which was almost Ernie level horrible as well, he goes, "That wasn't an act. That's how I sing." so apparently he's not a crooner either. But Michael McKean, on the other hand,
yes,
Spinal Tap. And this scene did have my quote of the day, or the quote of the episode for me, which is, "We could get by with one nipple." So.
All right, so the boys, the McGill boys, crash afterwards. I think it's funny that they both slept in their clothes. I think that's noteworthy.
Are they at Chuck's or Jimmy? They're at Jimmy's. Must be Jimmy's, right?
I don't know. Oh. I don't know. I just know that they both went to sleep fully dressed in bed.
Indeed. Singing.
I would guess Chuck's, just because he's going to make pancakes, so he has to know, like, kind of, he gave him options, so clearly he knows what's already in the fridge.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Eggs or pancakes? He chose pancakes. Wise choice, I have to say. I have to ask, because we didn't get to hear, what do you think Kim would have sang for karaoke?
We built this city. I don't know. Pat, I hear more as a Pat Benatar, actually, now that I think about it.
I was thinking more like a Journey tune. Like, she strikes me as like a Journey chick.
Journey, there's a little Joan Jett in her, and Pat Benatar. I could go Pat Benatar.
Okay. All right, so then we have Mike looking for Werner. There's actually not a whole lot that happens there. It's just they're just kind of letting you know that the Werner situation is still hot. And then we have Jimmy at Chuck's enormous, ostentatious headstone. in the
So-
cemetery.
Yeah, here's where we're gonna have to agree to disagree a little bit. I agree it was more than most, but I mean I've seen worse. but I mean it could have been a big obelisk. It wasn't that. So, but it was big.
But it was easily 3 or 4 times the surrounding headstones. It was a little obnoxious.
People there aren't going to notice.
Just saying. It is. It was obnoxious.
It was big.
Changes the landscape. It's obnoxious.
Okay.
But anyway, the point is, Jimmy's there doing things.
Yes, he's. I'm still coming up with other ostentatious arguments, but I'm not going to go there. It was. I mean, it's awesome. So Jimmy, given his limited acting repertoire, is by the tombstone and wants to look like he's grieving, and so it's like watermelon, pickles. He's just saying things to have his lips moving like he's talking to Chuck, and he counts. He's like 1,000, 1,002. So he's just. I mean, there's nothing there for Jimmy beyond putting on good airs. A couple people stop by. He plays the grieving guy really well, and then goes and gets a bear claw. Kim tells him to pace himself. Bear claw and some coffee to soup up. So I guess that's his station for most of the day, is to kind of be by the gravesite. And Kim's helping out.
Yeah. Helping him kind of make a sincere name for himself, since the board thought he was insincere.
Yeah.
Now it's time to make him look sincere. Yeah, I love the fact that he's like an extra in his own scene, mumbling odd words in the background to make it seem like conversation. It's funny. So then we have Mike going to Travel Wire. He wants to check and try and figure out where Werner is, and we find out that Werner was there.
Yes, he's waited on by soon-to-be dead Fred. As a matter of fact.
Poor guy, I know, right? Yeah, Mike kind of finagles his way into being able to see footage and things of that nature, so he can kind of figure out what's going on with Werner. And after that, we're at the memorial service in the library, in the legal library that was set up in Chuck's name.
Yeah, and so I mean, obviously this is 97% Kim's plan, or in terms of how, because I don't think sincerity is like Jimmy's strong suit, so I think she's helping him along. But so he's out pouting in the garden and he utilizes the film crew to not so subtly drop who paid for it. It's like, oh, he wants to be anonymous, but Jimmy paid for it. So they're doing everything they can to make sure folks are aware that Jimmy anonymously has paid for this library. Another big tick for the sympathy or the sincerity meter. And then he goes out and I love it when he's apparently he's so sad he can't eat, and that makes him kind of angry because he's hungry.
Yeah, well, they're talking about the food, and he wants one of the burgers that's inside. They have little mini burgers, and she gives him a look like, "You're not going to eat." And I love what he says, which is, "I'm allowed to pay for it, but too sad to eat." Yeah. I think that's the perfect sentiment for that entire party.
Yep. And our little girl from the film crew, her improv lessons have paid off again, because she was very convincing as the hors d'oeuvre girl who had like keen insight into how this whole thing was funded. Well played.
Right. Yeah. Oh, faking the sincere. It's a full-time job. One thing we did forget to mention was that Lalo, your buddy, your friend, your pal, your favorite, your pet, was outside watching as Mike and the crew are panicking, trying to figure out what the plan was to go and find Werner, and he follows Mike. Not really conspicuously, or at least as conspicuously as he thought he was doing.
Yeah. Mike's a tough guy to tail, I think.
True. Yeah. Absolutely. And so Mike kind of tricks him into a parking a paid parking lot and kind of does some damage to the machine by getting some gum into it on his way out so that he can get out without the guys behind him getting out. And it makes Lalo very angry.
He's a problem
Ran-
solver. He's a problem solver. I need to get out, and there's a car in my way. I'm going to move the car out of my way. This is what I really love about the show, and they do it in a lot of different circumstances, where they start to build up the building blocks on what's going to happen, but you have like no clue at all because you got Mike popping gum, which is the first time we haven't seen Mike chew a lot of gum in this show, and he's chugging them. He's getting quite a bit of gum, and then he eventually kind of makes this contraption with the wrappers to slide into the card reader, which gums up the works, no pun intended, and which temporarily stopped. But one can only hope you can't stop Lalo. You can only hope to contain him, and he contained him for a little bit.
Contained him long enough to lose him.
Yep.
That was really the important part.
That was an unhappy Lalo.
Yeah. So Lalo does, however, do the most conspicuous thing you can possibly do when you're following someone, which is ram the car in front of you into the street.
Yeah. Perhaps not the best action after just shortly ago murdering somebody, but
yeah.
He's a Salamanca.
Yeah. So then we have the board for the scholarship, Chuck's scholarship, because he had set that up when he died. And so there's a meeting of the board. They're going over potential candidates. Jimmy is part of that board. Even though when it was first mentioned to him, I don't know that was big on his list. I know it ruffled Kim's feathers a bit when it was mentioned. But he's there showing sincerity. And he takes a little bit to heart.
Yeah. Good, and I think he does have. I think Jimmy has a good heart, and I also think the person he voted for was the most like him. So there's a little bit of that, but I think that's part of the idea is to say, hey, sometimes there's somebody who's looking to make a change and they've had a rough patch and they're looking to turn things around, and maybe you need to give these people a break and help support them a little bit. But he was the only one, and he brings her name up, says he was the vote, and immediately the lady next to him goes, "Oh, the shoplifter." So it's like she's not going to fare very well. He makes a pretty good argument for her, and Howard insincerely says, "Quite a good argument, Jimmy. Let's vote again." I can't imagine the vote changed at all.
No, I think Howard's smart enough to recognize that that's important to Jimmy, and I think he was okay. I mean, everybody else was like, yeah, let's vote, But yeah. I don't know that Howard was incredibly, I just think.
He knew the vote wasn't going to change. I mean,
no, but I think he agreed. I think he understood that that this was important to him and it was worth it to revote. So. I mean, you have to, if you want Jimmy on the board, then anybody on the board, you have to listen to what they're saying. And he made a convincing argument that maybe the person who got interested in the law because she broke the law in the first place would probably be a good candidate. She might not start out at the, with everything perfect and glossy, but maybe that's not a bad thing. And I think that's a pretty reasonable, argument. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It seems.
I don't think there's anything wrong, but I also don't think. I think Howard follows a low risk vote because I think the three people he wanted were already picked, and that wasn't going to change. But it was still nice to hear Jimmy out, and
right,
and at least give it a shot.
Howard's a worse actor though than Jimmy is, so I feel like it would have been more obvious if he was super insincere about it. He's not. He's not good in that arena at all. All right, so then we have Lalo's very upset, so he goes back to Travel Wire where he had seen Mike apparently get some information, and he accosts the poor guy.
Yeah. So apparently we always thought Peter Parker was Spider-Man's secret identity. Turns out it's Lalo. Because I'm not sure, was there a desk? How did he, because basically what happens in the scene is that Mike was able to bamboozle his way through and get back and look at the security footage, and Lalo was like, hey, he wanted me to take a second look.
Yeah,
and
there's a glass partition between the guy at Travel Wire and everybody else. And so Mike was actually able to go behind the partition with the locked door and see the footage. But obviously that was not going to happen for Lalo because he was not as convincing.
No, there's always that air of menace around Lalo. And so guy has to give some directions, turns his back on Lalo. Never do that. And the next thing you know, he's up in the roof. And very impressive, good move. I see what he was thinking there, and it obviously worked out for him. But I'm not really sure how he made it up there, because as I looked at how that shot, it was like, he just...
No, it's just a basic framework and ceiling tiles. And those frames don't hold that much weight. So I'm honestly not sure how he got up there.
Oh, it's a cool scene, though.
Yeah, but I mean, they don't work like gymnastic bars. You're not going to swing yourself up into the ceiling by holding onto the framework for the... Yeah.
And apparently silently, too.
Right?
So it's like...
It was like a horror movie. He turned around and the guy was gone.
It's like, he's in the roof.
Exactly.
And he comes through, does a superhero landing-ish back behind, because, again, he's Spider-Man. And begins to, I think this is still the continued scene where he begins to actually look through the footage, and we see that Fred's no longer with us.
Yeah.
Sad.
Poor guy. Okay. Yeah. And then Mike finds Werner.
Who's on the phone? Who's he on the phone with, Gene?
Having a delightful conversation with Lalo.
That's right. Yeah. And I think Werner's starting to get the picture that maybe this isn't, but we saw it in the bar earlier in the other scene where he's kind of sitting down with the guys. He's just a
Very
naive, talky guy, and so he was explaining, and it was all, just get Michael. Michael will fix everything. Michael will fix everything. And Mike shows up and has obviously overheard part of this conversation. None of it good. None of the things Gus is going to want to hear. And tells Werner that it's time to go.
Yeah. And it takes the phone from Werner, actually, and just kind of listens. And, Lalo's on the other end going, Werner? And then it gets really quiet, and he's like, Michael.
Is that you, Michael?
He hangs up on him. But yeah, so he did hear part of it, Mike did hear part of a conversation about structural bits. Nothing too detailed, but still it's not good.
No.
Poor Werner's just so naive and does not understand the gravity of his situation. I think he might have in the beginning, but he's just grown so comfortable, and it's so bad.
Yeah, it did, and that not getting it carries on for quite a while, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we then go to Jimmy and Kim talking about the board, and they want to show they want to present the letter that Chuck left Jimmy in his will. They want to present that to the board as another level of sincerity.
Yeah, good strategy, I think.
Okay.
So
then we go back to Mike. It's very back and forth. It's like a tennis match.
Yes, there's two very interesting things going on.
And Mike tells Fring that there was a conversation that Werner was having with someone he didn't know who it was. Obviously, I don't think Mike knows who Lalo really is. So
yeah, he calls him an interested party, and do you have any idea who that might be? And Gus is like, I do. So Gus probably knows it's Lalo. Yeah. So that goes on for a little while, and then Mike's like, "Well, I'll bring him in." And Gus is like, "Nah, just stay there. I'll send some guys."
Yeah.
Which they're not sending some guys because to give Werner a big hug, and so
Not a candygram.
nope, not at all. And I I think this is going to happen. My guess is in Mike's mind at this point, he goes, "This is going to happen. It's over for this guy.
Right.
He can either be taken out by Gus's people who might do it in a really horrible way,
Right.
or I can do it and it'll at least be humane." So he says he'll do it. Gus is a little surprised. Not as surprised as Werner's going to be in a minute, but
Right.
Gus is a little surprised. But Mike says he'll take care of it. And then he walks Werner out of the car.
And Werner doesn't have any idea of the gravity of his situation. Mike has him call his wife, and he has to tell her to leave because she's going to be followed. So he has to tell her to go back home, and it turns into a screaming match. And you watch it, yes, it's very tense. Werner is having this conversation with his wife. It's very tense. It's a lot of yelling, and he tells her to shut up at one point, and you're just kind of watching Mike deflate. He just looks more and more sad. He holds it together, and he's very clear about what's going to happen, and he's very straightforward about it, like he always is. He's not very flowery. He doesn't talk a whole lot, but he looks sad. He looks upset. He does not, and they weren't like bosom buddies.
Yeah, they were.
Really, but I mean, they were. It's clear that Werner trusts him.
Yep. Yeah, and I think they bonded. They were.
Yeah.
I think they were friendly, and
Yeah.
I think it was. I wouldn't say so. Mike's usually like 100% business, so maybe it was a few degrees less.
Yeah.
With Werner, where Werner is just Michael's my friend, and and all that, which I think to a degree they. So it's tough. He does not want to do this, but he realizes at this point it's going to happen. But yeah, you do just watch when all this happens, and it's every part of it's tough. Werner eventually understanding, oh, I'm not coming back from this.
Right.
And then eventually understanding how important it is for him to turn his wife around and get her back out of the country, or she
Right.
could have a problem.
Right.
And tough scene.
Yeah.
And then Werner kind of does him a solid, and says, "I'm just gonna beautiful stars. I think I'm just gonna walk out downrange and let you do what you need to do." So that was, I think he didn't. I think he knew it was hard on Mike too. So I think he was not going to make it any worse because I think everybody knew it's going to happen.
Right.
And it does.
This was a colossal mistake.
Yep.
So, leaving just in that way, and oh. Okay. So yeah, he takes care of him out in the desert where Werner's gone.
Yep.
And then it cuts over to Gale and Fring in the hole.
Yeah. In the super lab. That's just in case it's not like it's not like a weird thing.
It's a hole. It's not a lab yet.
It's not a lab, but it sounded dirty. Anyway, they're in the start of the super lab. So.
Fair enough.
Well,
okay.
Gus, I do. Anyway. Gale's another highly unself-aware, naive, brilliant guy.
True.
And
True.
He's all excited. I could put up some fans and cook something for you real quick if you want.
Yeah, it's almost like a Lego piece. Like they swapped one out for another. They got rid of one naive, simple character and brought in another one.
Yeah, who's like brilliant, but kind of a man-child.
Yeah. And Fring Fring's obviously in a mood from this whole situation, and he's like, "No, we're not doing anything until this lab is completely 100% up and running."
I was waiting for him to go, right, Mike?
Yeah. And Gail kind of like, all right, I'm gonna go do something, and he just sort of excuses himself.
Yeah. Put a tough end of the conversation for Gail because he realizes he needs to get away from Gus. It has gone well.
Right.
Then he goes up and tries to throw a friendly hi to Mike. It's not the time. And
Yeah.
so poor Gail.
Yeah, and Mike doesn't even say anything. He exchanges a look with Fring. It's done. That's
Yep.
all. Yeah. And Mike and then Mike walks out. He doesn't even stay and wait for anything else. He just
Nope.
leaves without saying a word. It was a very it was a painful scene. That was not comfortable to be around. All right. Now we have Jimmy and his letter
Yes. And he starts reading it.
to the board.
Yep. And
Shows
he's
sincerity.
he's not adding stuff like Jimmy might want to do, And if you're ever in front of a board, they should let you be a lawyer again. Now he's reading it straight up, gets partway through, and then stops. And they do cut to the board, and they're kind of flipping papers. They're not entranced. At least a couple of them aren't. And so Jimmy kind of sees that as well, calls it an audible, and just kind of starts to allegedly speak from the heart.
Right.
About, and he describes Chuck accurately, including his flaws of having to always be right, and kind of pushy and a tough guy, and a very tough guy to have him be proud of you. Very difficult.
And he says that all he ever wanted to do was make Chuck proud, which I have to ask, do you think that's true? I feel like it's not true.
I think he would. I don't think he would have. I think he'd have been pretty cool or happy had Chuck at some point said, "I'm impressed with what you've done." I think that would have been some level of validation for him. I don't think that's exclusively why he did it, but
Right.
I think he wouldn't have minded Chuck being proud of him. He certainly didn't like Chuck's point of view, which is, it's you're a chimp with the machine gun and a lawyer. So
Yeah.
that's
Right.
not good. So, but yeah, it was a weird one because you don't know how much of what he said was true and how much of what he said was for effect, beyond
Right.
the fact of the remorse at the end where, he's lucky because he's got this letter from Chuck, but he could never write Chuck a letter to tell him what he really thought, which
That's where he lost me with the sincerity bit right about there.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is all violins.
yeah, because you saw, and it's funny watching Kim throughout this whole thing because you get, first of all, and like Ray Seahorn again, she's amazing. No lines in this whole scene. It's all just how she interacts, but you're riding with her on it. And you see her get super concerned when Jimmy packs the letter away. Like, oh crap, where's this going to go now? He's going to freestyle and it's going to crash and burn. To then he starts to talk about Chuck and describe Chuck, and she's beaming. She's just big smile on her face, and she's uplifted. Kind of finished.
She was a little teary too.
Yep, at the tail end when he kind of, in the whole letter, at the tail end of it, she's quickly wiping away a tear and all that. So he had everybody in that room fooled.
They get out in the hallway and he's like, yes.
Those suckers.
Yeah.
He was in the
And the
zone.
look on her face, like you just see the blood drain from her face as she realizes that the man that she lives with has zero emotion for his brother whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, and can be incredibly convincing.
Manipulative and
which is pretty impressive given his limited acting ability. So it is actually really impressive.
Yeah, I think for him, if he's got a nugget of truth to work with, he's fine. If he's got a fly on it, it's not. He can't do it.
Yeah,
So
I can see that.
yeah.
And so Kim gets kind of the old one too. Gets a big punch to the gut with about that was all show. Didn't mean any of it. Those suckers bought it. I'm in.
Because she bought it.
Yep. And
Yeah.
so she's staggering from that, But then, and he had said it, about being worthy of the name McGill in
You say that,
the
yeah.
wrap up. And so as they're getting ready, I know it's always you're a big fan of me. This poor clerk who comes up to help him, he's like, "Hey, sweetheart," because that's Jimmy.
Yeah.
Hey, sweetheart, get another form because I'm changing my name. I'm not going to practice under McGill.
Sure.
And then Kim is now further confused about what.
Yeah.
And as he's walking away, last line of season 4,
It's all good, man.
he's finally here as a lawyer. He's been there as a film producer, but now a lawyer too. So
Right.
So what a great ending episode. Lots of stuff.
Woo,
I'm worried about Mike.
I know.
This is hard. This is super hard for him.
It is. It is.
uh,
I don't think he. I mean, it's not that he underestimated who he was getting in bed with when he decided to work for Fring, but I just don't think he thought that he was going to have to do anything. Like, the possibility, yeah, maybe, but in a very sort of passive way, you accept that something terrible could happen, not that, I'm actually going to have to murder someone in the desert because they break a secret about a
Right.
lab, that's being built under a laundromat, something that should not be worthy of someone's life, As a cop, I think, he's got some, don't get me wrong, he's definitely morally flexible, but I think he sees, like most cops, he sees the value of life and where it should be as opposed to necessarily where it is sometimes.
Yeah, and Werner was a good man, and it can't be easy to say, well, I'm gonna kill you now, and so tough one, but pretty cool way to kind of get things set up for season 5. We now have the emergence of Saul Goodman, the lawyer. We'll be interested to see how the Gus and Mike relationship evolves given the current events, and more to come. So
Yeah.
So hope you made it all the way through, folks. Watching, if you did, greatly appreciate it.
Long.
What's that?
This was long.
Well, I mean, I was looking at the notes that I took. It's like, I don't know how you're short on this one because it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff going
It's a
on.
season finale. They packed a lot in.
Yep. So it was good too. But really appreciate you watching. If you get a chance, go to the Bog Panda YouTube channel, subscribe, set your notifications button up, and you'll know anytime a new Assault and Battery comes out. There's other types of content out there as well. You might want to take a look at that. So with that, just say thanks for watching, everybody.